Hi, it's Nid here at Spirit Law, your wellnesspreneur and wellnesspreneur consultant, and I wanted to give you an update about privacy law changes that have happened in 2020 and probably a little bit of what the future is going to hold. So there's been a few laws that have come into place during this year amidst all the other turmoil that's been happening in 2020 that have happened in different countries to help strengthen the rights of the individual where their personal information is being collected, stored and used by businesses. And that's in California and in Brazil. So I may have already talked to you, or you may have seen my video about European rights under the General Data Privacy Regulations. And these two laws are very similar in some ways and not in other ways to that law in Europe. So that's a really good video to go back to and to look at if you are thinking of working with people who may be in California or Brazil. Because the key with all of these laws that are getting enacted is that they're about protecting the citizens in those countries or states. And what those laws are looking to do is make sure that businesses that are coming in and collecting information from prospective or actual clients are following their laws so that their clients and their citizens are being protected and that their personal information is not being sold or used in a way that could be dangerous or harmful to the individual. And as a wellnesspreneur, I know that it's really important to you not to do anything that would sacrifice or risk the trust and safety of your clients. So I just wanted to let you know about these two laws. Now, the key thing I would say overarching this viewpoint is that if you're complying or working to comply with that European standard, which I have talked about before, then you are going to pretty much be most of the way there in terms of meeting these new laws from Brazil and California. However, if you're not, but you're still wishing to target people in those countries as potential clients, then you need to be getting on top of your new privacy compliance and policy. The key thing to note is it's not just about your privacy policy and what you stick in your privacy policy, but it's actually how you look after somebody's information and what it is you tell them at the time that you collect their information that you're going to do with that data. And also it's around how you give them information should they request it and how you actually log and manage their consent to giving you that information for what you can do and also when they might revoke it. And this is super important if you are doing those online videos and recording them. So the quick rundown of what those two laws are going to be is one in California, it's for those Californian residents. And it really only applies to quite big businesses. So over 25 million annual revenue. Maybe you've got a database of over 50,000 people, or half of your revenue is coming from selling data that you're collecting from people. Now, I'm assuming that most of you as wellnesspreneurs are not selling your clients' data, but if you've got a really big following, maybe you're close to hitting that 50,000 people target, and then you might need to be falling into compliance. It's also just really good practice, if you ask me, to work to these higher standards because this is about building trust in your business and how you take care of your client's safety. So if you can work to those higher standards and you can be setting that out in your privacy policy, then you're setting yourself up a cut above the rest in how you care and create a safe space for your clients. So what do you need to do with that Californian law? Well, one thing is that across the footer of your website, you want to have very clear links to your privacy policy and you want to have one of those pop-up bars that asks for consent to having cookies placed on their device for whether you're following them around their browser and the internet, following them through different sites, maybe to track the success of a campaign on social media. You'll also want to have a link to the privacy policy so it's really clear, and they need to be able to click on the website, on that footer, potentially on the pop-up if you're using a pop-up, yes, they consent to you collecting that information, or no, in which case you're not going to collect those cookies and you're also not going to start collecting any personal information. This is really important, and I think it's good practice anyway, following Europe's approach with cookie policies and having a cookie policy and privacy policy up front with that pop-up bar as well. It's definitely becoming more of the norm, and it's something that at Spirit Law, I really highly recommend you try and use this as a practice. You also are wanting to be really clear about what it is that you're collecting and why. What's the purpose that you want to collect that information, and what are you going to do with it? And that is the only thing that you're going to be able to do with that consent. So try not to be too wafty and broad if you're not sure. Try to be specific and clear with the information you are collecting from those people. You really must get consent in California from people if you're wishing to share their information with a third party. Now, you may be disclosing it to a supplier to help you provide your service. Maybe you're using Google Drive to manage to store their information, and therefore you need to tell them that you're using this supplier and get them to agree to that. You can tell them that it may make it impossible for you to provide your service if they don't agree, and if they don't, then you don't provide the service. Or, as I have talked about in my online course at least, you can really work out solutions with different clients if you really want to work with them and they're concerned about certain aspects of the suppliers that you use and their protection of their privacy. What's really important in California is not selling their personal information or making any kind of a profit. So be really cautious if you're trying to share in collaborations with other people. You should definitely be separately collecting personal information when you are doing collaborations with partners, and not sharing any client customer information if you're doing any of those co-events and leading courses. And lastly, what I would say is that the definition of personal information is a lot broader in California than it is in Europe. So really, it's anything that's going to identify a natural person as to their identity, that somebody might know who they are. And that does also include aspects of their computer identity too, which is that browsing history, their purchase history, which services they like, kind of what their online behavior is. The other country I mentioned was Brazil. Now, their law is definitely more akin to that European GDPR, and it's for all Brazilian citizens, and it applies for any business or individual that is collecting that personal information for any economic reward. So if you're a business, you're collecting, right? Even if it's donations, you might think you're doing the loveliest thing in the world, but you are a business, and therefore you are responsible to comply with this law if you're going to start trying to collect information from Brazilian citizens. And again, key to this, a bit like with the European law and the Californian, is really clear consent about why it is that you're collecting it, what you're going to do with that information, and being very clear about who those third parties are that you're working with, so that the client can withdraw that consent at any time should they not like that third party supplier, or they don't like what it is that you might be doing with their personal information. Again, that personal information is broader than it is with GDPR, so think about it being a little bit more like that Californian law, and that you really need to be careful about any sensitive information you're collecting from somebody around their health or their beliefs and values. When it comes to Brazil, you also want to be having somebody who is assigned responsibility for looking after data protection. If you're a wellnesspreneur on your own, then that's still going to be you. And if you are a slightly bigger organization, then you need to pick one of you who's going to stay on top of the law, stay on top of the compliance, and meet any of those requests submitted from potential customers. There are reporting requirements that you need to make sure that you're reporting to those local authorities if any client data is given freely by accident, if there is a breach of your data and privacy. And you are also liable to fines in both countries. In the California law, apologies for not saying it earlier, it's $750 maximum per person that has their rights infringed. And in Brazil, it's up to like 11 million euros or 2% of your annual revenue. So it does depend on the size and scale, but obviously not really enjoyable to get either of those fines. You want to ensure that you've got a data protection officer appointed in your business if you don't already. And then lastly, you want to make sure that your privacy policy and your back end of your privacy policy, so looking at how you collect information, how you manage the information, how you respond to requests if somebody asks you about information that you've got stored about them, all of that needs to be sorted out. You need to be on top of your data flow, who your processors are, what information is where, so you can quickly access and give it to those clients should they request information that you have stored on all of your services and providers' services about your client. You're then going to also make sure that you've got updated terms and conditions from all of those suppliers, making sure that you're complying with that GDPR level or that Brazil or California law through those suppliers when you are using them. And if they don't comply with those laws, then you are going to be wanting to find a new supplier. If you're looking to get that banner across the bottom of your website, make sure you get that pop-up box for the cookie compliance. You can have a look at my cookie policy, which has the links to some really great cookie sites that can help you get scans of your cookies that are on your site for putting in that pop-up box. You want to have a link to that privacy policy that you have hosted on your website on there for them to consent to or withdraw consent. And then lastly, you want to make sure that privacy policy is very clearly linked at the bottom of every web page that you have, and if possible on all of your communications and correspondence with your clients. So get it into your automatic footers on those emails. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch. My current templates do comply as best as possible with these. There may be some slight tweaks and changes you want to make depending on Brazil, Europe, or California, or none, or all of them. But please do feel free to get in touch, ask any questions. And as I mentioned, my templates do help you with making sure that you are compliant. So that will help you get most of the way there. But remember, it's the back end that's really important. It's not just the document, but it's actually what you're doing in practice that is the trust and safety of your client's information that you really want to be caring about. Hope that helps, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Keep shining your light.